Hey guys, I wanted to go over some wiring stuff. I see a bunch of people asking questions on how to wire, pressure transducers or, whatever, drive shaft speed sensors. Should they use shielded cable? Should they not? So what I do is I'm just going to show you kind of what I do and what the benefits are of it, and what the data will look like if you kind of follow some good wiring practices. I'm not going to go over chassis grounds and whatnot in this video, but I'm just going to show you some auxiliary sensors, like 5 and 12 volt stuff, how to pin it to the ECU, stuff that you should avoid. So anyway, I got a couple different things here. Standard pressure transducer from Holley. This is a 100 psi one. Most people use them for dome pressure, but you can use them for a whole bunch of different stuff. A lot of people get this and they pull this out of here, they mount this into the wastegate or wherever they're going to mount it, and then they plug this thing in here, and then they go find whatever wire they can from the auto parts store or whatever, and the job turns out like crap. Just being honest, I've wired a whole bunch of cars and I see some really crappy stuff. I'm going to show you some stuff. This isn't a stab at anybody. This is just, if you look through your own car, you'll probably find some of this stuff. So like this was just a toggle switch in a car. This was carrying 12 volt. I'm not a big fan of the big exposed terminals, especially carrying 12 volt. You'll see stuff like this. We got a 6-inch pigtail, and then we're doing this. So, why'd we do this? What was even the point? This is, a failure point, but neither of those things is really going to affect noise in data, but these are just some practices that you probably shouldn't follow. Like this one was classic. But this is years of adding stuff and removing it, and as racers, as car guys, some electrical wiring is usually the thing that scares everybody the most when it comes to a race car or a street car, and you usually don't want to pull that dash off and look at this stuff. Everybody's usually afraid of it. What I'm going to tell you is that if you're installing a EFI system, if you're installing Holley, touch as little of this kind of junk as possible in the car to avoid, problems in the future. I see a lot of data from people. They send me emails with their logs and whatnot, and a lot of the problems can be attributed to bad wiring. So I just kind of wanted to show you some things to maybe think about doing if you're looking at upgrading over the winter, or if you've got a project that you're about to start on and you just kind of don't know which way to go. So so what I've got here, one thing I use religiously, and I'm glad that they finally released it and made it readily available on the website instead of having to call them. Holley's got 3 conductor cable that they use, for their cam and crank sensors in their harnesses, but now you can buy it by the foot, or by the 100-foot or whatever 25-foot leads. They've also got the 7 conductor O2 sensor stuff as well. It comes in 25 and 100-foot. I'll have to dig up the part number. I'll find it. I'll find a link to it and I'll post it. Either in the comments or in the header of this. But anyway, this is pretty nice because not only is it shielded, and I'm not saying you need to shield every single sensor. To me, this is a better job. So instead of having 3 separate wires that are, whatever you could have found, and then butt connected together, every 3 feet because that's all you got. If you plan ahead a little bit and you're willing to spend a couple dollars, this stuff isn't that expensive. I think 100-foot of it, which is, I buy it by the 100-foot because I do a lot of cars, but I think 100-foot of it is right around $80 or something, $90. In reality, for good TXL wire, a nice jacket, being shielded, complete package, all 20 gauge, that's a pretty good deal if you actually start shopping for it. So I'm sure there's other stuff out there. I've got other stuff. It's actually 22 that I used for a while, and it works good too, as long as you're not carrying any type of load, which none of these sensors really are. So anyway, back to what I started off with. Here's your typical pressure transducer, your 3-wire pressure transducer. Comes with a pigtail, and most people they just kind of do whatever they can to crimp to this pigtail, and these are fine. I don't use them myself. I actually order these plugs from a company in New York called Race Spec. But what they are is they're actually a lipped connector. So this is a GT150, but it's lipped. I'm pretty picky in particular, but if you don't need to get into a lipped and back shelled heat shrink connector like this is what I do. I'm not saying that this should be industry standard, but this is just what I do because some of the stuff is out in the elements and I don't want to get water in it. I cut one off of something a while ago, but this is adhesive lined heat shrink that wraps around it. As you can see, it goes straight to our 3-conductor wire that's here. I label them and use adhesive lined double wall heat shrink. That's not something that you have to do. It's something that I do. The connectors are a couple dollars. I think they're $5, and they come with some pins. But you can also get these work. I prefer this from Holley over what comes with it. And heck, maybe after somebody at Holley sees this video, maybe they'll start throwing these in the box. This one's for, they label it a TPS, but these are on their website. Maybe they'll start throwing these in the box as opposed to the pigtails, or throwing both of them in the box. I don't know. But so if somebody from Holley's listening, put these in the box too. These are a little nicer. The reason being is what happens with this is y'all don't have the pins for it now. So if you don't have the pins for it, your only option is to, butt connect to this. It's not a big deal, but it is a failure point. The least amount of failure points, in my opinion, the better. So I like to, when I'm wiring a car, I like to run this cable from the sensor straight to the ECU. In a minute, I'm going to show you kind of how I join them together, and then I'll show you a couple other options on how you can join your 5-volt reference and your sensor grounds together. But if you've got just this one jacketed cable ran to each sensor, wiring actually becomes a lot easier. It's actually a lot faster. So if you've got, I've wired cars with 30 sensors on them, and all you got to do is run 30 pieces of this and run it out to each location, terminate it at the location, then terminate it at the ECU, instead of trying to source, 3 lengths of wire, and then maybe you run them for 3 foot, grab another sensor, and then you butt connect them together, wherever the two meet. And now you've got a harness that it honestly, it's hard to work on and it's hard to diagnose. So another thing, this is a crank sensor. This is a Hall effect crankshaft signal sensor from Holley. These come with their 36-1 crank trigger kits. I've used them for front wheel speed when you've got a ferrous target, like the back of a brake caliper or a brake rotor mount or something like that. I've used them for drive shaft speed. So if you're using anything sensor, in my opinion, again, use the jacketed cable, use it shielded. It's less likely to pick up noise along the way. This whole conversation is about, good versus bad wiring practices and noise. So I'm going to show you something here that I just want to show you what I'm talking about with noise, okay? So this is a data log, and this was done intentionally. This log looks like crap, and it's kind of weird. We got nothing but straight lines here. So it doesn't look correct. But, and if you look at like, here, let's find fuel flow, okay? Or not fuel flow, because that's another red line. Let's go to air fuel. Let me scale this out. This is still set up for like, there you go. So we got fuel flow, or air fuel right, okay? So if you look at this, this isn't accurate data. And when you guys post up like screenshots of stuff or pictures of your data, this right here doesn't make any sense to anybody. But if you think you have a problem, right click here, click on Mark Data Points. Now if you notice, zoom in a little bit. If you notice, you got these little marks right here, okay? Notice we don't have any marks through here, all right? I'm gonna get rid of AFR just so it's a little easier to visualize here. So when you right click, we're gonna undo it here, but mark, so this is your data, it populates, and you're looking at this and you go, oh, what the heck is going on? I'm gonna zoom in a little further. Right click, mark data points. So across a a 5-second section right here. So here's like right around 5 seconds, right? 5-second section, we're missing over 50% of the data. That's a problem. So we don't know what happened. This was done intentionally. I don't really want to get into why or how this was done intentionally, but it was. Here's one that was wired the way, I wire cars all the time. So here's RPM. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to look across a 5-second span again, right? So we're going to mark data points. Look at that. It's all lit up. We're not missing anything. Both of these logs are sampled at 100 frames a second. This log is from a car that I wired that, I just kind of followed good wiring practices, and I was conscious of what I was doing when I was wiring it, and the thought process was to make, the wiring be accurate, to make sure it was not going to be a problem. And it turned out to not be a problem. Now, if we compare it to, where'd it go? Come on, honey. That's fine. This is junk. This doesn't tell us anything. So if you just look at the two, just bounce back and forth, right? So look at the difference between the two of them. We've got full data, everything we needed, and we got nothing. So this may seem irrelevant when you guys get into a rush when you're wiring a car, but it's actually more important than you think it is. The proper grounding in a car, I can make another video on that. I don't really have anything to here at the moment to show you, but this stuff's important, and if you've got the option to do it right the first time, that's kind of my opinion on it. So I want to show you a couple other things here real quick. Holley sells all the mating connectors for all this stuff, okay? So here's your Hall effect sensor, right? Part number 554124. Don't buy this thing, cut the end of it off, and then butt connect to it with AutoZone wire. Just don't do it. You spent, $100, $200, $300, $400 on your drive shaft speed setup, or whatever it is. Don't hack it up. Just take a little bit of time and do it right. You'll have a lot less problems in the future. Same thing with, if you're going to spend the money and run boost control and whatnot through your ECU, wire your sensors right. I mean, these sensors aren't cheap. A lot of people complain about failures. Mount them, isolated from the engine. Some people have had good luck mounting them onto the engine. Some people have not. Another function I use this wire for, or this cable for, is buttons on steering wheels, right? So, here you've got buttons on a steering wheel. So say you're going to put two of them, on a steering wheel, and say they're both going to be, 12 volt, right? So I'll take both of the, one wire off of each button, and I'll crimp a pin onto it. Like say you want to use these MetroPack pins. So we'll stack two of them there. So now we're going to apply 12 volt with the red conductor. Okay, I'm just using this for an example. And then your signals to the ECU from your buttons will go across these two. So does it need to be clean wiring? It doesn't need to be shielded. It just makes things nice. It makes it more serviceable. When you pull the dash off of your car, you're not scared. You're not embarrassed. If you have a problem, it's a heck of a lot easier to diagnose as opposed to jumping from one to the next to the next. So anyway, those are auxiliary things when you're out, under the hood and whatnot. Now, as for terminating at the ECU, so this is a plug, for the ECU. I don't know which plugs these are. But anyway, I don't know which connector it is, so don't send me a message going, was that J3 or J4? I don't know. I got a bin of them. So if you haven't ever played with these are very easy to add and remove, okay? So when it's in the ECU, there should be no protrusion here, okay? These won't be protruded, this will not be indented. So if you've got your wiring harness and you say, well, I want to add a pin here, or say you're adding coils to a main engine harness that doesn't have coils integrated into it already, what you'll have to do, keep a thumbnail, or if you don't, use a little flathead screwdriver. You'll hear it click. It'll open. You'll see this protrude. Okay. This one's already opened. All right. If you need to pull a wire out, make sure that these are open. There you go. That's it. When you buy if you buy the connector kit from Holley for like a Dominator, where it comes with, 4 connectors and a bunch of pins, you'll, crimp your wire onto the pin, and this wire actually fits into the connector. Cheap wire will not. And I got some here. Here you go. This will be really hard to tell in a video, but this is 20 gauge, okay? And this is what they call 20 gauge. If you look, it's hard to tell in a video, but this jacket's very thick, where this isn't, okay? This is TXL wire. This is, I think they call this GPT. But the jacket's really thick on this stuff, and it will not actually go into the connector. It's not gonna fit in there. It doesn't matter how hard you try, it's not gonna work. This wire is also not gonna crimp onto the pins right. So some people gripe and say, oh, it's too much money to buy this from Holley because I can buy it from so-and-so, Joe Blow Auto for 12 cents cheaper. In reality, you can search all over the place. You'll probably find some stuff a little bit cheaper. If you do stuff in bulk, like I do, you wind up hunting down pricing, as cheap as possible, because you're buying 1,000 foot or whatever, 20 of these connectors or 40 of these connectors at a time. But if you're just working on your own car, my suggestion, honestly, stop wasting the time of trying to save 50 cents. Just buy the stuff from them. They know what works together. But anyway, when you want to insert the wire into it, just pick whatever pin you are, and then you'll feel it. You won't be able to hear it in this video, but you'll feel it. And when you're done, after you've put your wires in, right, just kind of push that down. It should go all the way in. If it doesn't go all the way in, one of these wires isn't all the way in. Buy some cheap wire, attempt to crimp a pin onto it, then try to shove it in there, and you will find out very quickly what I'm talking about. So if I'll try to show you where it doesn't click. So I'm gonna pull this like halfway out, right? Now this side will go down, but this side's still hanging up. It will not close. So don't be frantic and start smashing things trying to shove it into your ECU, just look for the wire that's not all the way detented in, and then click your detent. The last thing that I wanted to show you was terminating at the ECU, right? So say you've got 20 different sensors into this ECU. They give you in a Dominator, they give you a bunch of sensor grounds and sensor 5 volts and low current 12 volt outputs. How I found this, it's in the help section, but if you're in your global folder here, okay, click on pin map. This is what comes up, right? So this is just a global folder from a different, the nitrous car did. Anyway, view inputs is up here, LCD view outputs. This stuff I'm sure you've all looked at. View fixed is where you need to look at, okay? So J1, if you look here, J1, all these A's, this is on J1A, okay? J1B is right here. Those are fixed pins in the ECU that you cannot change. If you're in a Dominator, all these will be available for you, okay? So these are strictly HP and these are just HP. This is all you'll have in HP, okay? So if you have to terminate to an HP, what you'll need to find is right all the way here at the bottom, J1, B14, and B20. So you'll have B14 for your sensor ground, and then you'll have, B20 is your low current 12 volt, and then A26 is your sensor 5 volt output, okay? So also on A14's got a sensor ground. So it gives you 2 sensor grounds, one 12 and one 5 volt. If you have an HP, which a lot of guys do, and you're adding dome pressure to it, this is something that I do. Let me find it right here. This is something that I do. This is for a Dominator, but this is something I do. I'm not telling you that this is what you have to do. You may not want to go through all the hassle of trying to source all this stuff to make it work. You can use terminal strips, but what I do is I've got all of your inputs from all the different devices, and then you've got one pin that's going to 5 volt and one pin that's going to sensor ground, and then I use Z splices, which are buried up under here. But I tag one wire out of the ECU and then split it to whatever I need. So this has got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This has got 8 5 volt sensors in it, okay? And I use a Z splice down here, crimp one end of the Z splice, and then take 8, black leads for ground and orange for 5 volt, and then crimp the other end. And then you can branch out, and now you've got a little octopus sticking off of the main engine harness for a Dominator, the main ECU plug. If you're just adding, 2 things or something, another option would be to use like a terminal strip. Those are readily available. You pick them up at Home Depot. It uses a whole bunch of stuff that everybody should have, readily available. I gotta find some. There you go. So you can use one of these. So what you would do is you take your 5 volt out of the ECU, you take your sensor ground out of the ECU, terminate them here, and then if you want to do, input 1, 2, 3, 4, and now all you have to do is just piggyback leads off of these to go out to your sensors. These are fine too. I'm not a big fan of these, but it is what it is. I am a lot bigger of a fan of doing this than I am seeing this. Don't do this. Stop it. Don't even buy these things. They shouldn't even be legal. This is horrible. So don't buy these things. Don't use them. If you own them, throw them away. If you're not going to throw them away, give them to your neighbor or something, because you shouldn't have these. Same thing with these. This is a different style of where, you know, they just kind of crimp around the wire and then you shove a spade into them. Don't do this kind of stuff. If you spend all this money on EFI and you actually care about what you're doing, don't do that. It's only going to make your life a lot harder in the end. Don't do this. Holley, Mauser, eBay, Amazon, all these companies sell connectors. Buy them. They're cheap. You can buy a whole kit from Summit for like $70, and it comes with a ton of these MetroPack connectors, the insertion tool or the extraction tool, $20 for a crimper. Like, I think I got some of the low bucks stuff here. So like this is a MetroPack crimper, right? They're like $25. You can find them on Amazon, Summit. If you buy the little kit of MetroPack connectors, you get, there you go. You get a lot of them. So, I mean, this is probably more than one kit, but the weather seals, the plugs if you're not, if you've got like an 8-pin, and then you're only going to use 7. Holley uses all MetroPack stuff. If you pick up a $79 kit of connectors and a $20 crimper, and you keep it all MetroPack, you have everything you need to work on anything on your fuel injection harness. So really the whole goal with this video is to kind of just steer people away from doing stuff crappily. Just care about what you've got. Just, we spend a lot of money on this stuff, and then the implementation is more important than the money spent, in my opinion. There's little things that you can look at that are cheap that may keep you away from having burnt wire, right? So like, here's another little. This is from Mr. Gasket. I think I got these from Summit. I just tried them out. Part number's there, 6326K. This stuff's pretty sweet and it's cheap. This will withstand 1200 degrees Fahrenheit continuous. So all this is this nice black sheathing that goes over top of wire. So instead of your typical wire loom, if you've got maybe a crank sensor on an LS that's really close to, the header or something, this stuff literally, you slide this stuff over top of this 3-pin, right? There you go, cut it to length, and then what I do with it is I'll use like a piece of heat shrink, go over the end of it and seal it off. I also use the heat shrink to seal off the ends of this this cable, right? So, just food for thought here. Slide your heat shrink over, just makes it a little prettier. And it keeps, moisture and water out of where you had to strip it back. So, sorry for the long rambling. I just try to be thorough with any of these videos that I put out for you guys. I'd rather you guys just click like and say thanks instead of watch a video and go, man, he missed this or that or this. What am I supposed to do with this or that? I try to put out enough content where you guys don't, not that I'm not open to questions, but that you guys don't, I'm not leaving you with a bunch of questions. So with that said, if you do have any questions, go ahead, let's hear them. See you.